Good morning, you're watching Daybreak live on A News and I'm your host Nadia Jani, here to take you through the day's top stories. So let's take a look at the headlines. The deal has been made. First round of US-Iran talks makes major progress towards a lasting peace deal, Pakistan says. Far-right candidate Abelardo de la Espriella narrowly wins Colombia's presidential runoff. And a major explosion at Qatar's largest energy site injures dozens as 18 remain unaccounted for. First this morning, high-level Swiss talks between the US and Iran have concluded with a 60-day roadmap toward a final peace deal, while mediators Qatar and Pakistan report encouraging progress on maritime security. The diplomatic breakthrough faces immediate regional friction due to the fierce opposition from Israel and the volatile conflict in Lebanon threatening to derail the fragile ceasefire. Here's the latest.
High-level talks between the US and Iran in Switzerland have concluded with a 60-day deadline to reach a final deal. While mediators Qatar and Pakistan announced encouraging progress, no final agreement has been signed. Washington and Tehran agreed to establish a high-level committee on nuclear issues and open a direct hotline to secure the Strait of Hormuz. However, Israel has rejected the diplomatic outreach.
No matter what happens in the talks, with an agreement, without an agreement, I pledge to you that Iran, as long as I'm Prime Minister, will never have a nuclear weapon. Never.
Back in Tehran, the rhetoric is equally defiant. President Masoud Pezeshkian claimed Washington was forced into a complete diplomatic turnaround.
We will not give up our right to enrichment. The US has reversed its position by 180 degrees.
But the real gridlock centres on Lebanon. Iranian negotiators confirmed that while key drafts for temporary oil sanctions waivers and the release of frozen assets are finalised, Tehran will freeze all progress unless military operations in Lebanon stop completely.
The issue of Lebanon received more emphasis than anything else. If the end of the war is not declared there, subsequent issues will certain why not be negotiated.
With Donald Trump warning of severe strikes if Iranian proxies continue attacks, mediators have rushed to set up a new deconfliction cell to save the ceasefire. Technical talks continue this week, but with regional fronts hanging by a thread, the 60-day clock is officially ticking.
Now let's take a look at the stories shaping the day across the globe, and we stick with our first story this morning, but we head to the New York Times for the information because on its page it says first round of US-Iran talks conclude, mediators say. Well, within our first report you would have heard exactly what these talks were about. It took place on Sunday. Qatari and Pakistani officials say that it was encouraging progress towards a lasting peace deal during talks in Switzerland. Now, after last week's agreement, which happened this time last week to reach a 60-day deal, late Sunday night, the discussions were more focused on clarifying some of the most confusing messaging from Iran, especially on the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, enforcing the ceasefire in southern Lebanon, and elements of a nuclear deal. Now, earlier, President Donald Trump had threatened to attack Iran if it did not stop Hezbollah amid continued clashes with Israel. Now, Iran has dismissed the warning, saying it was prepared to fight no matter what. And last week's initial agreement includes a commitment to reaching a final deal within 60 days, as well as an end to fighting on all fronts, which includes Lebanon. And that's exactly what Iran is calling for, along with the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. However, there has been an upsurge in fighting between Hezbollah and Israeli forces in southern Lebanon, and Israeli airstrikes that the health ministry says have killed dozens of Lebanese people, including women and children. Now, that escalation has led the US to declare a new ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah on Friday, which they have so far both been able to heed. Now, continued clashes and airstrikes prompted Iran on Saturday to announce that it had shut the Strait of Hormuz, though tracking data showed that the vessels had continued to pass through it. But we will provide you with more information as we get it. It's a story that will be continuing throughout the coming weeks, especially with the 60-day period that will be leading up to an official deal between the US and Iran, and also to stop the fighting in southern Lebanon as well. But we will definitely provide you with more information as it continues. And we also have a guest later on in the program to discuss this in more detail, especially to some of the requirements that both teams are asking for. Okay, let's move to next story this morning, and that's on the Guardian website in relation to the UK and what's going on there, because Keir Starmer, who is the Prime Minister there, is expected to announce his exit plan to clear way for Burnham to become Prime Minister. Now, last week, we know that if we just scroll down a little bit, there's these two men here. So you've got Andy Burnham on your left, and then Keir Starmer on the right. Keir Starmer is the current Prime Minister at the moment, and Andy Burnham, who was the Mayor of Manchester, has now been able to win a parliamentary seat. So he's now an MP in the UK, could now decide to run up against Keir Starmer. That's if well, not run up against, but basically take a leadership position if Keir Starmer decides to resign. And it's something that is definitely in the offing, very close, because it is expected to be announced the timetable of his departure Monday morning, which is today, clearing the way for the newly elected MP Andy Burnham to become Prime Minister within a formal contest by the autumn. Now, Cabinet ministers say that Starmer will set out his intentions outside number 10 Downing Street, starting the process of the UK installing its seventh Prime Minister in a decade, which is a big number, because we know that the Conservatives in the UK have had a number of different leaders, and now the Labour government is changing it. It's only been a year and a couple of months since Labour got into power. Now, Starmer and his inner circle began working on drafts of a resignation speech on Saturday, reports say, and the most likely timetable involves him staying in office until the autumn, allowing for a new leader to come in by September. Now, this is where it gets a bit interesting, because this is when you should tell your close friends, your relatives what's going on, but not tell someone that is not able to keep stum or keep quiet on information that hasn't been released yet. But Donald Trump appeared to confirm Starmer's resignation in his Truth Social post on Sunday afternoon, and he wrote, Keir Starmer will resign as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. He failed badly on two very important subjects, immigration and energy, and then in brackets he put open North Sea oil. I wish him well, is what the US President Donald Trump said. So the information is out there. It's likely that we will provide you with that breaking news later on this morning. The UK is 3 hours behind us here in Baku, but as soon as we get that information as to when he decides to announce his resignation, we'll definitely let you know and find out what the next steps are. Now, let's turn over to our next headline this morning, and that's on Deutsche Welle website in relation to what's going on in Colombia, because Colombia election has taken place and the hard right candidate claims victory. So Colombians voted in a presidential runoff election on Sunday. It was a very tight race, and according to preliminary results, hard right, this leader here with his fist up in the air, Abelardo de la Espriella, has won with 49.66%, according to data from the National Registry Office. Now, his leftist rival, Ivan Cepeda, had 48.70% of the votes going his way, less than a percentage point separating them. Now, he has not conceded defeat. However, the outgoing president, Gustavo Petro, said on social media that neither candidate can be declared president. He said the vote count would determine who would lead, and that he will abide by the judge's decision. Now, De La Espriella said that he received a congratulatory call from the US President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has also congratulated Espriella to say to him that on his win of victory, and mentioned in his X tweet that the Trump administration looks forward to working closely with your incoming administration to advance regional security, cooperation and illegal immigration into the US and strengthen its economic ties. Colombia's best days are ahead. Signed, Rubio, is what he said on X. But we have more on this later on in the program, so we will definitely provide you with more information. But it does look like this right hard-right leader is definitely in position to become Colombia's next leader for a number of years. Okay, now let's move over to our next story this morning, and that's on the World Cup. Well, the World Cup records that look set to be broken. Now, we have the results coming in later for you today. We know that there was a recent battle between Morocco and New Zealand, and Morocco was able to take it with their key striker, Mo Salah, which we will discuss later on in the programme. But I just wanted to highlight some of the historic happenings that have taken place over the course of this tournament as we come into its second week. Now, as you can see on the screen, Lionel Messi has had 19 World Cup goals in total, which is actually higher than the German striker Miroslav Klose, who had 16. But just behind that number and close behind is 14, and that's France's captain Kylian Mbappe, who is now the all-time leading scorer for France with 58 and could well have the goals record in his sights himself, leading through that. After that, we go to England, and Harry Kane, the captain there, has scored 81 goals in 115 games for England. And Wednesday's game meant that Harry Kane became the second England player after David Beckham to score at 3 different World Cups. So a number of history is being made. If we keep scrolling down, we'll see more of these players that I'm referring to. Then we come to Cristiano Ronaldo, because he's become the oldest outfield player and has become the one to start the World Cup at age 41 and 132 days. They're very specific. He was born in February 1985, so he's now 41 and I believe one of the oldest outfield players to continue to play in the World Cup. Then we go over to Cape Verde, and they've had a historic number of games, and especially because of its goalkeeper Vosner, who has become one of the stories of the tournament. He made 7 crucial saves to keep out European champions Spain in Cape Verde's World Cup debut, and at the age of 40 has become the oldest player to appear in the nation's debut World Cup match, surpassing the record set by Caracas' Eloy Aroum. And just on Cape Verde, if we keep scrolling all the way down, we might be able to see exactly who I'm referring to, but Cape Verde has also come out punching their way through with another draw against Uruguay after shocking fans with a 0-0 draw with Spain in their opener. And then Cape Verde took a dream lead against Uruguay through its player Kevin Pina's long-range free kick, which went through the middle of the wall in the 21st minute. And they also drew with Uruguay 1-1, and we'll provide you with more information as we get it throughout the course of the day. Well, if we could just keep scrolling down, so I just don't always see Messi on the screen. I know that it's a little bit, there we are, brilliant. So there we have Harry Kane, who I mentioned previously before, as England's captain. If we keep scrolling down, we'll also get to see, I believe it's France next, with Kylian Mbappe as well. Here we go, as he is definitely the favourite for France to bring it home. Let's see whether or not that happens. And if we keep scrolling all the way down, we'll come to one of the final ones, and that's Cristiano Ronaldo as well, playing at the age of 41, one of the oldest players there. Okay, well, that's your morning press roundup for now. We're now going to take a short break, and when I return, I'll discuss the rest of the global stories. Don't go anywhere.
Looking back on the past is important to learn from experience. It is like a chronicle, page by page. War, Auschwitz, love, humor.
What was the atmosphere like in your home? Perhaps even a particular smell that you associated with?
The smell of the theater. Soviet Union had many shortcomings, and the world we live in today gives us little reason for optimism.
And welcome to Prime Time. What a show we've got lined up for you today. In a complex world, clarity is power. Two hours live diplomacy dissected in a spin-free environment. That's Prime Time with me, Guy Schoen, weekdays on A News.
Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak. Now let's have a look at the key stories this morning. And we head first over to the UK, and a year and 2 months into a new government, Labour leader Keir Starmer's journey from opposition hero to troubled head reveals the complex forces behind a political downfall, especially with rumours that Starmer will do what many in his party has been pushing for, his resignation from office. Let's go to this report.
I now call the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Politicians, often seen as unshakable, can falter when strategy, public expectation and internal dynamics collide. For Sir Keir Starmer, who took office in July 2024, promising change and integrity, governing proved far more challenging than anticipated. As leader of the opposition, Starmer successfully pressed former Prime Minister Boris Johnson over the Partygate scandal, contributing to the parliamentary committee findings that helped push Johnson out of the Commons. Once in government, Labour Party faced serious policy and electoral setbacks. In the 2026 local elections, the party lost seats nationwide, including historic defeats in traditional strongholds, and rival parties such as Reform UK made major gains. Starmer's controversial appointment of veteran politician Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the United States, despite security vetting issues tied to past associations, drew criticism and became a focal point for parliamentary attacks. Internal pressure has grown within Labour, with a significant number of MPs urging him to outline a future leadership plan in the wake of electoral losses.
President Trump, can you get a peace deal?
US President Donald Trump also made public comments on his leadership. On Sunday, June 21st, Trump posted on Truth Social that Starmer would resign, citing what he described as failures on immigration and energy policy, specifically calling for the opening of North Sea oil. The cumulative effect of electoral setbacks, controversial appointments and parliamentary challenges has left Starmer struggling to maintain confidence within his party and among voters. A reminder that early strategic success does not guarantee lasting political authority.
Now we head over to Ukraine, and a diplomatic crisis is mounting between Warsaw and Kyiv over a deep-seated World War II dispute. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk warns the political rift is a strategic mistake harming both nations. Tensions flared after Poland's president stripped Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky of a top national honor. The move retaliates against Kyiv renaming a military unit after wartime nationalists who massacred Poles. While Zelensky defended the move, Tusk is now scrambling to defuse the geopolitical fallout. Staying on Ukraine and Russia have reported new attacks as the conflict shows no sign of easing. A missile strike in southern Ukraine left one person dead, while Russia says it intercepted dozens of drones heading towards Moscow. Here's the latest.
One person has been killed and 3 others injured after Russia struck Ukraine's southern Odessa region with an Iskander ballistic missile on Sunday evening. Odessa Regional Governor Oleh Kipper said the missile hit an agricultural facility in the Odessa district, causing vehicles and fuel storage tanks to catch fire. Meanwhile, Russia says it shot down dozens of drones over Moscow in the early hours of Monday, forcing the temporary suspension of flights at several airports. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin said nearly 60 drones heading towards the capital were intercepted. He did not provide further details, but said emergency services were sent to the areas where the drones were brought down. The latest attack comes after drones targeted Moscow's only oil refinery last week. During that strike, Russian air defences reportedly shot down nearly 200 drones in one of the largest aerial attacks on the city since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. In Sevastopol, in Russian-annexed Crimea, authorities cancelled all open-air public events on Monday and said streetlights would remain switched off. The city's governor also urged residents to reduce electricity use. As Russia deals with continuing drone attacks, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said new domestically produced drones will be capable of striking targets more than 3,000 kilometers away. He made the comments in an interview with Ukrainian television channel 1+1. Zelensky also said Ukraine is ready to begin producing missiles for Patriot air defense systems. He made the remarks in a separate interview with TSN.
Thousands of people have marched in Prague on Sunday to protest the government's planned overhaul of public media funding. The protest comes ahead of planned strike by the staff at Czech television and Czech radio. Authorities shortened the march due to high temperatures across the city. The government says the changes reflect public opposition to licence fees and insists the broadcaster's independence will be preserved. Now, the public dispute between Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and US President Donald Trump has escalated, with Italy's foreign minister cancelling a planned visit to Washington. Here's more.
Italy and the United States, until recently close allies, have become embroiled in an increasingly public dispute after Donald Trump accused Giorgia Meloni of seeking political advantage from repairing ties with Washington. The dispute began after Trump claimed Meloni had begged him for a photograph during this week's G7 summit in France. Meloni rejected the accusation on Friday, calling the US president a liar. Trump repeated the claim on Saturday on his Truth Social platform, saying the Italian leader wanted to repair relations with him to improve her domestic approval ratings. Meloni responded in English on Instagram, describing the attacks as senseless and telling Trump that her popularity was none of his concern. She also suggested he focus on his own standing with voters. The row widened when Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani announced he was cancelling a planned visit to the United States scheduled for next week.
As you know, unfortunately, there have been very serious and offensive statements made by the President of the United States toward the Italian Prime Minister. I was forced to make the decision to cancel my visit to the United States scheduled for this coming Monday and Tuesday, because we cannot allow anyone to offend Italy in the way the President of the United States has done.
The exchange also touched on security issues. Trump again criticized Italy for refusing to allow US military bases on its territory to be used during the war with Iran. Meloni replied that any use of those facilities is governed by existing agreements and insisted that Italy would remain a sovereign nation under her government.
From one heated debate to another heating problem, because Europe is facing a spell of extreme summer heat with temperatures soaring across several countries. The hot weather is not only raising health concerns, but also affecting economies, tourism and major public events. Let's go to this report.
As Europe endures another weekend of extreme heat, economists are warning that recurring heat waves could increasingly weigh on growth across the continent. In France, the new governor of the Bank of France, Emmanuel Moulin, said on Saturday that prolonged periods of extreme heat can slow economic activity and increase the risk of disasters such as wildfires and floods, putting pressure on banks, insurers and other sectors. His warning comes as temperatures continue to climb. Dozens of French regions were placed under the highest heat alert, with temperatures of up to 40 degrees Celsius expected from the southwest through Paris and into Burgundy on Sunday. Authorities have stepped up emergency measures, activating a national response plan and urging people to stay hydrated, avoid prolonged exposure to the sun, and limit alcohol consumption. The soaring temperatures are also affecting daily life and tourism. In Italy, visitors in Florence and Rome sought shade, water, and cooler indoor spaces, while some gathered around fountains to cool down as temperatures climbed towards 38 degrees Celsius. Germany issued heat alerts across much of the country, warning that a combination of heat and humidity could also trigger severe thunderstorms. The extreme weather is even disrupting World Cup celebrations. In Spain, officials closed a fan zone in Madrid ahead of Spain's match against Saudi Arabia because of the heat, forcing supporters to watch elsewhere. Scientists say climate change is making heat waves more frequent and intense, increasing risks to public health and the economy during the summer months.
Now to the Middle East, where mourners have gathered in southeast Lebanon on Sunday to bid farewell to 4 people killed in Israeli airstrikes the day before. The strikes came just hours after a ceasefire with Hezbollah took effect. Israel said the attacks responded to more than 50 projectiles fired by the Iran-backed group. Israeli forces stressed their commitment to the ceasefire while acting against threats to their personnel. Lebanon's health ministry reports over 4,000 people have died in Israeli strikes since March. At least 54 people have been injured and 18 have been reported missing after an explosion at a factory in Qatar. The country's Interior Ministry announced early Monday morning. Qatar's Interior Ministry said the blast happened on Sunday evening at the Brazan local gas supply facility. Qatar Energy said the explosion and fire occurred during the startup of operations at the site. Emergency response teams were deployed and the fire has since been brought under control. The company described the incident as a technical accident and said there was no gas leak posing a threat to public safety. Search operations are continuing for the missing 18 people. Now to South America, and Colombia is awaiting the final certification of its presidential election after a preliminary count put right-wing candidate Abelardo de la Espriella narrowly ahead. But ongoing President Gustavo Petro said neither candidate can be declared president. Here's more.
A near-final tally in Colombia's presidential election shows right-wing candidate Abelardo de la Espriella ahead of leftist rival Ivan Cepeda. With 98.22% of ballots counted, de la Espriella has 49.77% of the vote, compared with 48.59% for Cepeda, according to the National Civil Registry. More than 41 million voters were eligible to cast ballots across roughly 13,000 polling stations in the runoff election.
I
will govern for all Colombians, for those who voted for me and for those who chose another candidate. There will be no winners or losers. There will be no reprisals, no persecution, because in a democracy there are no irreconcilable enemies. There are compatriots who think differently.
Under Colombia's electoral system, a candidate must secure more than 50% in the first round to win outright. As no candidate reached that threshold, the top 2 advanced to Sunday's runoff, where the highest vote total determines the result. The margin has drawn both domestic scrutiny and international reaction. US President Donald Trump said on social media that de la Espriella had won big, while Secretary of State Marco Rubio congratulated him following the vote. In Colombia, the process is still ongoing. Cepeda says his campaign is challenging results from around 33,000 ballot boxes and is awaiting a full ballot-by-ballot review. The National Registrar says verification is now underway at municipal level and will be extended nationwide. Under Colombian law, the result must be confirmed through a final count overseen by notaries and judges. De la Espriella, a 47-year-old lawyer and independent candidate associated with the Defenders of the Homeland movement, has campaigned on tougher security policies and cuts to public spending. He is, according to preliminary results, set to become Colombia's next president for the 2026 to 2030 term, with inauguration scheduled for August the 7th.
The US military says it has carried out a strike on a vessel in the Caribbean, killing 2 people it described as narco-terrorists. US Southern Command says no American forces were harmed in the incident. It added that 6 male survivors were identified after the operation. Officials say intelligence indicated the vessel was traveling along known narco-trafficking routes and engaged in drug operations. Rights groups have previously condemned such strikes as extrajudicial killings. Ramiro Valdez, one of Fidel Castro's earliest collaborators and a longtime figure in Cuba's government, has died at the age of 94. President Miguel Diaz-Canel announced on Sunday. Valdez participated in the 1953 Moncada barracks assault that launched Cuba's revolution and held senior roles in the Cuban Communist Party, including membership in the political bureau until 2019. He was awarded the titles Hero of the Republic and Commander of the Revolution. Miguel Diaz-Canel described Valdez's death as significant, stating it hurts deeply like that of a father, and paid tribute to his revolutionary role. The European Union is preparing new legislation aimed at reducing dependence on critical supplies from a limited number of sources, and as concerns grow over trade imbalances with China and vulnerabilities in global supply chains. Our reporter Abahayat Jafarova reports from Beijing.
The European Commission is preparing legislation that would require EU companies to diversify sources of key supplies and critical materials. After an EU summit in Brussels, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said businesses have been de-risking from China too slowly and that further steps are needed to strengthen Europe's economic resilience. The push follows China's export restrictions on rare earth elements last year. China dominates the processing of many critical minerals used in industries including electric vehicles and advanced manufacturing. EU leaders also agreed to discuss what they call global macroeconomic imbalances with major trading partners and consider whether additional trade measures are needed. Also, China was not named in the summit conclusions. EU officials say there is growing concern over the bloc's trade deficit with China, which amounts to around 1 billion euros or $1.15 billion per day. Meanwhile, China responded to a G7 statement on critical minerals by calling on countries to respect market economy principles and international trade rules, rather than forming what it described as small circles. Abahayat Jafarova, A News, Beijing, China.
To Japan, and more than 10,000 people have gathered in Tokyo to protest government plans to expand military capabilities and revise the country's pacifist constitution. The ruling Liberal Democratic Party has already approved a draft proposal to update key security documents, including plans to strengthen defense spending and capabilities over the next 5 years. The move has also reignited debate over Article 9 of the constitution, which renounces war. Now we're going to head over to a quick break. When I return, we'll discuss more of the global stories, and I'll be joined by an in-guest studio to focus on the top story this morning, as well as some regional headlines. Don't go anywhere.
We are in Seoul, the Republic of Korea, a country that for more than 70 years has lived in the shadow of unfinished war.
I was 18 years old when the Korean War broke out. My 2 brothers were dragged out to the front yard of the village public hall and forcibly subjected to a trial under the name of People's Trial.
The military demarcation line, created after the Korean War, became a massive wall, preventing separated families from meeting.
Less than a kilometer away lies North Korea.
지금 우리 무장력은 그 어떤 위기에도 대응할 철저한 준비가 되어 있으며
Подписанный сегодня договор предусматривает в том числе оказание взаимной помощи в случае агрессии против одного из участников.
Russian-Ukraine war now is connected with North Korean participation in Russian army.
the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula is the only outcome that we will find acceptable.
If the U.S. persists in such hostile policy towards the DPRK, there will never be denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome back and thank you for joining me this morning. Now let's turn to the top story this morning. And the first round of US-Iran talks concluded early this morning. Qatari and Pakistani officials said there was encouraging progress toward a lasting peace deal during talks in Switzerland. But this is only the first step, as there are strains over Lebanon was clearly apparent. Here to help me break this down further is Shiraz Mahmood Khan, research scholar from the Western Caspian University. Welcome again to the program.
My pleasure.
Well, things have definitely changed since last week. A lot of changes happened in a good way. In a good way, we know that obviously there's been a memorandum of understanding between the US and Iran, which was a week ago today, which definitely put an end to the conflict. However, there's still an uphill battle, if you could put that into those terms, as to what happens next and the agreements that they will both make. Now, the war between Israel and Hezbollah seems to be the main stumbling block in all of this. We know that Pakistan and Qatar are both mediating the process between the talks, but due to Israel's position not wanting to remove its troops in southern Lebanon, what do you think will happen? Do you think the US will push them to have to concede to this requirement, or will something else take place?
Well, as long as the memorandum of understanding is concerned, and it has not been revealed, but as we know a little about it, that U.S. actually wants to have better relations with Iran at this point in time, and they want to. I mean, it's been Iran and U.S. have been in a problem for quite a long time. And U.S. at this point in time cannot really afford, in a way, this war for a longer period of time, because back at home, the prices have gone really up. It's like around $4-point-something per gallon in U.S. There's a lot of pushback from the home front as well. And there's a lot of pressure, and so U.S. want to reframe its relations with Iran at the moment. That would be obviously at terms and conditions and all that. But whereas Netanyahu's recent statement was that I will not let Iran as long as I'm the prime minister, I would not let Iran to, enhance its nuclear, probabilities and all that. But so J.D. Vance also wants to, has its own statements and goes that we want to have better relations with Iran on certain terms and conditions. So it's very tricky because Iran does not want any kind of, there's recent attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon as well, and obviously there's retaliations going on. So Hezbollah and Israel are not part of this deal. I mean, part of this deal directly, like nobody's signing this deal and all this between US and Iran, and mediated by Pakistan and Qatar, obviously. So they are out of it and they are in it, so it's just quite complicated in that way.
It is quite complicated, and I don't know whether or not that could be a sticking point, as mentioned, because Israel has very different military goals and objectives to the US. However, when it came to the Memorandum of Understanding that was signed last week, it did say for the fighting to stop, not only between the US and Iran, but also with southern Lebanon as well, being that fighting has to stop on all fronts. But just moving on a little bit from there, Trump has also renewed threats against Iran, saying that he will bomb Iran if necessary, to which Iran has shrugged this off and said that we're ready if we need to go back to fighting. And sometimes you think, well, where's this come from? We don't want to escalate. We don't want to have to go backwards in order to go forward. And with that, does the US have any bargaining chips in their belt? Are they still in a strong position, or is Iran calling the shots in this?
Well, it's complicated again because, from US side, the US is still in the Hormuz, right? It's defending its territories and all that. And I think it will remain in Hormuz for some time, unless until there's a total, the strait is totally opened for logistics and all that. But yes and no. And Iran has its own point of view. Iran does not want any kind of interference in Hormuz at this point in time, and Iran wants it to be open as well, because Iran is, economically quite dependent on Hormuz. So is US, and so is Qatar, so is Pakistan, so is the Gulf countries. So everybody in this game is quite dependent on opening the Hormuz somehow or the other. Everybody's being affected. The world economy is being affected and all that. But so yes, a little support is always there, and Israel doesn't want US to withdraw from there, so that they keep on pressuring Iran, because Israel thinks that you cannot really negotiate with Iran at this point in time. So Israel has its own point of view. Whether that would be heard by the US or by Donald Trump, that's another part of the story. But in previous statements, Donald Trump actually did not really had some good words for Israeli Prime Minister Mr. Netanyahu. So things are really complicated. I don't know what would happen, but right now negotiations are going on. Pakistan and Qatar are the main negotiator. The middle people, and I think things will get better. Things will get better if this thing comes up with its own terms and conditions.
Well, just on that as well, we can't ignore the fact of what US President Donald Trump has been saying over and over again for Iran not to have any type of uranium program, to which it says it has enough just for the benefit of its own people, for its own sovereignty within that. How might negotiations go when it comes to its
Iran is not getting any. Iran is not talking on the uranium thing at all. Iran says that we will continue with the uranium thing, which is not acceptable, especially to Israel, because Israel thinks, and Iran is a bigger threat than anyone else. So and this uranium part would be as how much uranium is required for Iran, how much it can do, what infrastructure would it build on for that, or if it stop the infrastructure, because obviously uranium enrichment needs some infrastructures. So I think U.S. will keep an eye on that, and that negotiations is the most complicated thing, because right now the first round has gone through, and this discussion did not occur in that first round.
No, it hasn't, no.
So that has been, I don't know, avoided, or is going to be the next round, is going to be the crucial round or whatever. But this is what it is.
Yeah.
The very first thing why this war started in the first place, it's been, quite some months. It's been 60 days that, this war is there. Hormuz was not that of a crucial factor, but nuclear was it. So I don't know how they will negotiate into that. Iran is, doesn't want to think about it even, and this is the very main concern for both, even for the U.S. and Israel as well at the same time. But U.S. seems to be a little, on a negotiating level and all that. But Israel has a very, rigid and very firm stance on that.
Yes, they definitely want that. They don't want Iran to hold any form of a nuclear enrichment program, no matter how big or small, because they feel that their livelihood is on the line. Their lives are at stake. But just on that, how do you think history will actually mark the test between this particular war in the next decade or decades ahead? We've seen the US come in with Israel against Iran, who in that sense, didn't start this, but were very much trying to protect itself from foreign interference. Now that we've come to diplomacy on the table, how will this later be judged? We know that economy was very much used within this, with the Strait of Hormuz, that the US did not realize that Iran was going to be able to shut the Strait of Hormuz, which put a number of pressure on the US and the economy, the global economy, as you mentioned. But how would it all be judged at the end? Who will be like the heroes and the losers?
Okay, so there's no heroes and the losers, right? So one thing is for sure, the history will tell you in future that no matter how powerful you are, and if you're not on the ground, if your military is not on the ground, it's very hard to contain that place. A. Second is the warfare is changed. So now you cannot really have a place, you cannot have capture a place without asymmetrical warfare. So unless and until that warfare, you know it, and you know that warfare, and you need to know the place. You need to do a reconnaissance of that very place first, as the troops will go do the reconnaissance, know the asymmetrical warfare, and then only Hormuz could have been captured if both were on the, because Iranians are very good with asymmetrical warfare. There's a big ship coming in, and a small ship goes, and it interrupts everything. So asymmetrical warfare, hybrid warfare, and all these. So the warfare, things are changed, and with the force, with just the force, you cannot capture a place. So it would be a wider moment for a multipolar world. It's like every thing is not done by the force. It's other things are required, and which U.S. is doing right at the moment. They have put the force, and now they are negotiating. The people are coming on the table. There's another part of the story that U.S. Donald Trump puts the statement, in a very wrong time. I mean, it was like they were about to sit on the table, and they were about to sit on the table. But if you've seen the TV, obviously you see that Irakshi had a very different body language. So I mean, yes, that's another part of the story. But the thing is that it's very complicated. It's very complicated at the moment. But Pakistan and Qatar are the only people who can negotiate. Who can make them negotiate. And
just on that then, between the mediators in all this, why is it crucial that Pakistan and Qatar have been able to come in as the middlemen, as we described, to bring these two parties together? Why does it seem like it could only have been Pakistan and Qatar, in reference to it couldn't have been China, Russia, the UK, some of the other European countries?
Okay, so Pakistan is the only country which has, particularly Pakistan I'm talking about, is the only country which has very good relations with U.S. since 1950s. Okay, it was a part of Soviet-Afghan war when it was happening back in 79 to 80s, late 80s. So it was a very, close ally of U.S. then. And after 9/11, so it had been a close ally for U.S. after when 9/11 and all that, when they had to come in here in Afghanistan and invade and all that. So war on terror, a very, very important war for the U.S. So very reliable partner for decades, Pakistan, and since the 1950s and all that. So that, and then Pakistan has very good relations with Iran as well. It's not just the border, but it has very good strategic ally, relationships, and obviously there is a little religious relationships as well. They have the same relations and all that. And Pakistan has very good relations with the Middle East. Pakistan is the only non-NATO ally of U.S., I think.
Right.
So very good relations with U.S. Pakistan provides security to Saudi Arabia and all these things. So Pakistan, the only country which could do that was Pakistan. And Qatar as well at the same time, because Qatar has 2 decades of an experience of mediating and all that. So, be it Afghan, Pakistan and all that in Doha, it did not succeed at other part of the story.
No, exactly. That's another section that we don't have time to get into.
Yeah.
But it is still very interesting, just the key actors, especially the role that Pakistan has played in all of this and how the relationship with them.
And Iran only trusts Qatar in the Gulf countries.
Oh, I see.
You understand? So they have very good connections because they believe in Qatar, and here they believe in Pakistan.
Even though Iran actually struck Qatar.
Yes, exactly. That's another part of the story. Things are really complicated. I cannot do analysis.
Yeah, because that sounds, you hit your friend. You hit your friend, and then you only trust that friend.
Exactly.
That's a bit strange.
Exactly, but Qatar and U.S. has good relations as well. So at the same time as Pakistan and U.S. has good relations, they're 2 countries mainly, and that's what everybody is. Yeah. So I think things will be going on because it will take time.
Yes, I'm sure.
U.S. and Iran, nobody could even imagine that they will come back on one table.
Yes.
If they have come to the table, they might negotiate as well. Things are complicated.
They are indeed.
Very complicated geopolitics.
Thank you, Mr. Khan, for coming on and explaining that. That'll be the first of many rounds of discussions and diplomacy. Thank you again.
My pleasure.
Now we move over to what's going on in Azerbaijan, because President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, has received a Jordanian parliamentary delegation led by Speaker of the House of Representatives in Baku. During the meeting, Aliyev expressed confidence that cooperation in political, economic, humanitarian and inter-parliamentary fields will continue to grow. The Jordanian delegation thanked the president, noting it reflects the strong ties between the 2 nations. The discussion also covered bilateral relations, future contacts and collaboration with the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Now, it was a gripping showdown in Group G at the 2026 World Cup ended in drama as Iran held a 10-man Belgium side to a goalless draw in LA, keeping fans on the edge of their seats. Let's go to our correspondent in Tehran for more.
Reporting from a cinema complex in Tehran, where fans have gathered to watch live their national team's second Group G match of the 2026 World Cup.
Iran and Belgium played out a tense 0-0 draw in Los Angeles on Sunday, leaving both teams searching for a breakthrough in Group G. Belgium were without star winger Jeremy Doku due to illness, and Romelu Lukaku struggled to make an impact up front. Defender Nathan Ngoy was sent off in the second half, reducing Belgium to 10 men and complicating their bid for a first win in pool play. Iran goalkeeper Ali Reza Behramvand was named player of the match, making 7 crucial saves, including a point-blank stop from Maxim de Kuiper.
Last Tuesday, Iran played New Zealand in its Group G opener, drawing 2-2. Negatively affected by visa issues and travel restrictions due to the Tehran-Washington conflict, Iran will meet Egypt on Saturday in Seattle in its third and final group stage match. Turaj Shiralilu from Movie Theater in Tehran for A News.
Now time for a quick break. When I return, I'll have a full update of the latest headlines, plus a look at what's making the front pages this morning. Don't go anywhere.
Looking back on the past is important to learn from experience. It is like a chronicle, page by page. War, Auschwitz, love, humor.
What was the atmosphere like in your home? Perhaps even a particular smell that you associated with?
The smell of the theater. Soviet Union had many shortcomings, and the world we live in today gives us little reason for optimism.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jeddah. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gabala. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, for A News.
Hello, you're watching Daybreak here on A News, and I'm your host Nadia Jani, here to take you through the day's top stories. So let's take a look at today's headlines. The first round of US-Iran talks makes major progress toward a lasting peace deal, Pakistan says. Far-right candidate Abe Elado de la Espriella narrowly wins Colombia's presidential runoff. And a major explosion at Qatar's largest energy site injures dozens as 18 remain unaccounted for. Now let's take a look at the story shaping the day across the globe, and we head first over to Deutsche Welle website and what's going on in Colombia, because the elections have begun with a runoff between the two candidates, and the hard right candidate has claimed victory over its win. Now Colombia's voted in the presidential runoff election on Sunday, and according to preliminary results, the hard right Abe Elado de la Espriella has won with 49.66% of the votes, according to data from the regional registry office. Now, his leftist rival Ivan Cepeda had 48.70% of the votes going his way, which is less than a percentage point separating them. Now, he has not conceded defeat because counting is still continuing, but outgoing President Gustavo Petro said on social media that neither candidate can be declared president as yet. He said the vote count would determine who would lead the country, and that he will abide by the judge's decision. Now, De La Espriella, the guy that you can see here with his fist up to the sky, said that he received a congratulatory call from the US President Donald Trump, as well as US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, also congratulating him on X, saying that the Trump administration looks forward to working closely with your incoming administration to advance regional security, cooperation and illegal immigration to the US and strengthen its economic ties. Now, that's what was written on X there, but we will provide you with more information later on in the program. But it definitely looks like that Espriella has been able to, at less than a percentage point, scrape through to be the new leader of Colombia. Okay, let's move over to our next headline this morning, and that's on Fox News website over what's been happening in relation to the US pool. Now, a former US Olympian has been arrested allegedly. So who is that? It's David Hearn, a US Olympian who denies vandalizing the reflecting pool after a viral arrest. Now let's go to the video, and you can actually see him on a bicycle around the pool, where the US guards have actually decided to take him into custody. If we just show that video now, and I'll explain some of the information behind that, because he was allegedly arrested for vandalizing the reflecting pool in Washington DC, and is denying he did anything wrong. Now, David Hearn was detained on Friday as he was finishing a long bike ride. Here, as you can see, the video coming up that we'll show to you right now. Hearn said that he had removed his cycling glove to simply touch a long strip of rubbery material which appeared to have delaminated from the bottom of the pool, as you can see the video coming up now. So that's him just there, standing right there, exactly with his helmet on, and this is the pool. This is the pool in Washington DC there, and then he is approached by police guarding that particular area before he is put in handcuffs. I'm going to just let that video continue to play. Now, when he was stopped by the US Park Police and National Guard, he actually said, "I'm a curious citizen. I reached down to see what it felt like. It was very rubbery," is what he said. Now, US President Donald Trump has claimed that the pool has been defaced by vandals and will probably need to be drained and refilled again, despite recent refurbishment. Now, the reflecting pool has undergone a multi-million-dollar resealing and painting project, but despite the makeover, which has cost an estimated $30 million, the pool has continued to be plagued by algae and, more recently, paint problems as well. And in this video, as you can see, they're just speaking directly with David Hearn, and then later on we'll see exactly what happens next. They actually put this former Olympian into handcuffs. They're just taking him away as they gave him chatting to him about what exactly happened. And he said that, as I mentioned, he said that he didn't vandalize anything. He was just curious and put his hand in the water to actually feel what was going on. And as you can see in the video, he's still talking with police, the US Police Park officials there, just along chat about what's going on before, and now, as you can see there, he's actually put in handcuffs and taken or be taken into custody, but still saying that he did nothing wrong. So that's the video there that you can see. Okay, now let's move over to our next story, our next headline this morning, and that's on the BBC website, and that's on A News, apologies, and that's in relation to our top story this morning, because Iran and US agree roadmap for final deal, mediators say. So US and Iran talks began on Sunday, and Qatari and Pakistani officials said there was encouraging progress toward a lasting peace deal during talks in Switzerland. Now, we know that it's been a week since US and Iran both decided to come together and sign a memorandum of understanding to put in place a 60-day deal, which both sides will then later agree to. But right now, that means that there is an end to the war and conflict between the two. And late on Sunday night, the discussions were focused on clarifying some of those key issues within the Memorandum of Understanding and the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, especially because of the ceasefire in southern Lebanon and elements of a nuclear deal. Now, there's a number of issues around this that both Iran and the US really want to iron out, especially when it comes to Hezbollah and Israel in southern Lebanon and what that actually means and whether or not the fighting can stop on all fronts, which is what Iran and Pakistan is calling for. But now let's go to our report, which shows some more information into our top story. So let's take a look at that.
High-level talks between the US and Iran in Switzerland have concluded with a 60-day deadline to reach a final deal. While mediators Qatar and Pakistan announced encouraging progress, no final agreement has been signed. Washington and Tehran agreed to establish a high-level committee on nuclear issues and open a direct hotline to secure the Strait of Hormuz. However, Israel has rejected the diplomatic outreach.
No matter what happens in the talks, with an agreement, without an agreement, I pledge to you that Iran, as long as I'm Prime Minister, will never have a nuclear weapon. Never.
Back in Tehran, the rhetoric is equally defiant. President Masoud Pezeshkian claimed Washington was forced into a complete diplomatic turnaround.
We will not give up our right to enrichment. The US has reversed its position by 180 degrees.
But the real gridlock centres on Lebanon. Iranian negotiators confirmed that while key drafts for temporary oil sanctions waivers and the release of frozen assets are finalised, Tehran will freeze all progress unless military operations in Lebanon stop completely.
The issue of Lebanon received more emphasis than anything else. If the end of the war is not declared there, subsequent issues will certain-why not be negotiated.
With Donald Trump warning of severe strikes if Iranian proxies continue attacks, mediators have rushed to set up a new deconfliction cell to save the ceasefire. Technical talks continue this week, but with regional fronts hanging by a thread, the 60-day clock is officially ticking.
Now we turn over to the UK, and it's been nearly 2 years, coming into 3 years now, into a new government of Labour leader Keir Starmer's journey from opposition hero to troubled head reveals the complex forces behind his political downfall, especially with rumours that Starmer will do what many in his party have been pushing for, his resignation from office. Let's go to this report.
I now call the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Politicians, often seen as unshakable, can falter when strategy, public expectation and internal dynamics collide. For Sir Keir Starmer, who took office in July 2024, promising change and integrity, governing proved far more challenging than anticipated. As leader of the opposition, Starmer successfully pressed former Prime Minister Boris Johnson over the Partygate scandal, contributing to the parliamentary committee findings that helped push Johnson out of the Commons. Once in government, Labour Party faced serious policy and electoral setbacks. In the 2026 local elections, the party lost seats nationwide, including historic defeats in traditional strongholds, and rival parties such as Reform UK made major gains. Starmer's controversial appointment of veteran politician Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the United States, despite security vetting issues tied to past associations, drew criticism and became a focal point for parliamentary attacks. Internal pressure has grown within Labour, with a significant number of MPs urging him to outline a future leadership plan in the wake of electoral losses.
President Trump, can you get a peace deal?
US President Donald Trump also made public comments on his leadership. On Sunday, June 21st, Trump posted on Truth Social that Starmer would resign, citing what he described as failures on immigration and energy policy, specifically calling for the opening of North Sea oil. The cumulative effect of electoral setbacks, controversial appointments and parliamentary challenges has left Starmer struggling to maintain confidence within his party and among voters. A reminder that early strategic success does not guarantee lasting political authority.
Now to Ukraine, and Russia and Ukraine have reported new attacks as the conflict shows no sign of easing. A missile strike in southern Ukraine left one person dead, while Russia says it intercepted dozens of drones heading towards Moscow. Here's the latest.
One person has been killed and 3 others injured after Russia struck Ukraine's southern Odessa region with an Iskander ballistic missile on Sunday evening. Odessa Regional Governor Oleg Kipper said the missile hit an agricultural facility in the Odessa district, causing vehicles and fuel storage tanks to catch fire. Meanwhile, Russia says it shot down dozens of drones over Moscow in the early hours of Monday, forcing the temporary suspension of flights at several airports. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin said nearly 60 drones heading towards the capital were intercepted. He did not provide further details, but said emergency services were sent to the areas where the drones were brought down. The latest attack comes after drones targeted Moscow's only oil refinery last week. During that strike, Russian air defences reportedly shot down nearly 200 drones in one of the largest aerial attacks on the city since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. In Sevastopol, in Russian-annexed Crimea, authorities cancelled all open-air public events on Monday and said streetlights would remain switched off. The city's governor also urged residents to reduce electricity use. As Russia deals with continuing drone attacks, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said new domestically produced drones will be capable of striking targets more than 3,000 kilometers away. He made the comments in an interview with Ukrainian television channel 1+1. Zelensky also said Ukraine is ready to begin producing missiles for Patriot air defense systems. He made the remarks in a separate interview with TSN.
Now we head over to the region because there were 2 separate quadrilateral meetings which took place in Cairo over the weekend. The first, held on the 20th of June, involved the foreign ministers of Turkey, Saudi Arabia and Egypt, alongside the US representative responsible for Arab and African affairs, with discussions focusing on a range of regional issues, including developments in Libya, plus a host of other concerns. Joining me now to further discuss this is Associate Professor Dr. Zwa Gazimov, Turkish-German University in Istanbul, Turkey. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
No problem. Now let's begin with the first Cairo quadrilateral meeting. Do you believe the principal external actors are now working towards a common objective where the unity of Libya, the end of institutional division and the holding of presidential and parliamentary elections in line with the United Nations roadmap? Do you think that's all coming together?
Well, these aspects definitely were integral part of negotiations we have witnessed in Cairo. But what we have seen also, and that is also of paramount importance for the entire region, that we have a high-rank diplomacy with a high-rank US-American diplomat coming to the region. The meeting took place in Cairo, in the capital of Egypt, with the participation of key regional powers like Turkey and Saudi Arabia. But in the same time, Iran talks and the situation in and around Iran, US-American relations, they played a role. They were an important topic, but not the only topic these countries came together to discuss. So we see now like a broader array of topics And we have a dialogue in the region, at least between the US and a number of regional powers of the Greater Middle East.
And how important then is that the Egyptian and Turkish forces recently participated alongside one another in Libya during the Flintlock 2026 exercises? Do you think that this military-to-military contact symbolises a significant strategy thought between Cairo and Ankara over Libya?
Well, Turkey played and plays a big role in with regard to the state-building measures in Libya after the decade of turmoil in North Africa. And in the same time, we see that the dialogue between Cairo and Ankara is also forged, becoming more intensive in the last years. So that's another very important message. So Egypt is willing to discuss, to reshape the north of Africa in a close cooperation with Turkey. The same goes also for Saudi Arabia in a trilateral context. So and also with regard to Libya, and having here the high-ranked U.S. American diplomat, we see that this cooperation, trilateral cooperation, has a very strong transatlantic element.
Yes, definitely. And I guess with all of that, it's helping to bridge those gaps that were previously there. Now, given Egypt's own interest in the Eastern Mediterranean and its previous concerns regarding Turkish-Libyan maritime arrangements, could this issue still generate considerable friction between Cairo and Ankara?
I don't believe so. What we observe, like since 4 or 5 years, of quite rapidly intensifying cooperation between Cairo and Ankara in many fields that touched the economic field at the very start of the rapprochement between Cairo and Ankara. So we see a very close cooperation in the field of investment, in the field of textile, logistics. And we see now with regard to this and in Libya as well, a political dialogue, a very solid one, actually. And that is a very positive development, actually, in the Greater Middle East.
Okay, now let's turn over to the second Cairo quadrilateral involving Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt and Pakistan now. And the principal focus there was the implementation of the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding between the US and Iran. How significant is this format in supporting the implementation of the MOU?
Well, that shows actually how broad is the geography of this important. Turkey and Pakistan have a very rich history and tradition of cooperation also in the previous decades. And we see that Pakistan became an important platform for US-Iranian negotiations, discussions, and also Islamabad diplomacy.
No, I can't seem to hear you very well. I do apologise. And we're going to have to cut that conversation, unfortunately, and head over to our next topic this morning. And we head over to what's taken place over in the Middle East, because at least 54 people have now been injured and 18 reported missing after an explosion at a factory in Qatar. The country's Interior Ministry announced early this morning. Qatar's Interior Ministry said the blast occurred Sunday evening at the Bazan gas facility. Qatar Energy say that the explosion and the fire broke out during startup operations, describing it as a technical accident. Emergency teams were deployed and the fire has since been brought under control with no threat from a gas leak reported. Search operations for those missing are now continuing. Over to Albania, where protesters have marched through the capital, Tirana, demanding the resignation of Prime Minister Edi Rama and opposing a luxury resort project backed by the son-in-law of US President Donald Trump. Demonstrators chanted revolution and resign while carrying banners reading, "The motherland is not for sale." Protesters argued the project could restrict public access to the country's coastline. The development, estimated to cost around €5 billion, has raised environmental concerns. Critics say building the resort near a protected wetland could threaten the habitat of flamingos, seals and nesting sea turtles. Now to South America, and Colombia is awaiting the final certification of its presidential election after a preliminary count put right-wing candidate Abelardo de la Espriella narrowly ahead. But outgoing President Gustavo Petro said neither candidate can be declared president. Here's more on that story.
A near-final tally in Colombia's presidential election shows right-wing candidate Abelardo de la Espriella ahead of leftist rival Ivan Cepeda. With 98.22% of ballots counted, de la Espriella has 49.77% of the vote, compared with 48.59% for Cepeda, according to the National Civil Registry. More than 41 million voters were eligible to cast ballots across roughly 13,000 polling stations in the runoff election.
I will govern for all Colombians, for those who voted for me and for those who chose another candidate. There will be no winners or losers. There will be no reprisals, no persecution, because in a democracy there are no irreconcilable enemies. There are compatriots who think differently.
Under Colombia's electoral system, a candidate must secure more than 50% in the first round to win outright. As no candidate reached that threshold, the top two advanced to Sunday's runoff, where the highest vote total determines the result. The margin has drawn both domestic scrutiny and international reaction. US President Donald Trump said on social media that de la Espriella had won big, while Secretary of State Marco Rubio congratulated him following the vote. In Colombia, the process is still ongoing. Cepeda says his campaign is challenging results from around 33,000 ballot boxes and is awaiting a full ballot-by-ballot review. The National Registrar says verification is now underway at municipal level and will be extended nationwide. Under Colombian law, the result must be confirmed through a final count overseen by notaries and judges. De la Espriella, a 47-year-old lawyer and independent candidate associated with the Defenders of the Homeland movement, has campaigned on tougher security policies and cuts to public spending. He is, according to preliminary results, set to become Colombia's next president for the 2026 to 2030 term, with inauguration scheduled for August the 7th.
Now, Brazilian authorities have uncovered a large cocaine shipment hidden inside timber cargo in what officials say could be the country's biggest ever cocaine seizure. The operation was carried out in cooperation with the US and Bolivian authorities. Acting on shared intelligence, authorities increased border inspections on the 19th of June. And on Sunday, they intercepted 8 lorries carrying around 260 tons of timber. Officials say, based on previous cases using the same smuggling method, illicit drugs could account for between 10 and 20% of the cargo's weight. A fire at a hotel in the Dominican Republic's Bahia Bib resort has left 1 person dead and forced the evacuation of nearly 1,700 tourists. According to emergency services, the victim was 46-year-old Italian national Francesca Valentino. Videos show flames and thick smoke rising from the burning hotel. Officials say strong winds and the palm-thatched roof helped the fire spread quickly. 3 people were taken to hospital while 6 others were treated at the scene. The blaze has been brought under control and an investigation is now underway. Turning to Australia now, and it signed its largest ever defence export deal, agreeing to self-advanced radar technology to Canada. The system will support surveillance in the Arctic region in what both countries describe as a major step in defence cooperation. The deal is worth 2.5 billion Australian dollars and is the first overseas sale of the system, which can detect aircraft, ships and missiles up to 3,000 kilometres away. Canada says it will use the technology as part of a broader Arctic surveillance and communications network. The agreement is expected to create around 300 jobs in Australia. Now to something a little sweet, and one bakery in Los Angeles is pulling out all the stops for some special World Cup sugary treats. Customers have been queuing to get these football-themed conchas. Conchas is a Mexican sweetbread that is often eaten with hot chocolate or coffee, and it's something this baker is very pleased with. Let's take a look.
As a Mexican, we're always thinking, like, what can we do to be part of everything? And soccer is a really important part of us. So we decided, okay, what can we do? What can we offer to our clients? And the jerseys are like the first thing. But yeah, we do have the mascots as well. This is the first time we feel like we are in it. Because other years we just watch it and it's over there. But now here, for the games being here and us being here too, and being able to offer something feels different. We feel like we're part of it. And when the games are, we have okay, we prep everything so we can watch the games.
They look very, very tasty. I think I'll need to stand in line with the other customers to grab some of those Concho's sugary sweets. Now we stay on the World Cup, and Spain strengthened its position with a 4-0 win over Saudi Arabia, while Egypt earned a historic first ever FIFA World Cup victory by defeating New Zealand 3-1 as the 2026 group stage race intensifies. Now let's go to these results, which are coming up on your screen. 4-0 over Saudi Arabia. There we are. Belgium was a draw with Iran, and Uruguay 2-2 with Cape Verde, and New Zealand lost 1-3 to Egypt. Well, that's your top stories for today. Thank you so much for joining me, but please make sure you stay tuned throughout the day to A News for further updates on key stories from around the globe and in the region. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.